like that
Okay.
term, stupid budget.
Okay. Okay. Welcome back, everybody, to our Parasha Insights, where we're studying the teachings of Rav Moshe Shapiro. We're going to jump right into it because we have, to use the word doozy, might be a good description today, because I'm very excited by these teachings. I think they're so original and unique and take us into an area of Torah that we normally would not explore. So here we go. The people have sinned. Moses says, you have been guilty of a great sin. And now I will go up to God. Maybe, ulai, maybe you'll be forgiven. So Moses says to God, the people have sinned a significant sin, chata'a gedola, a large sin. Vayasu lahem Elohei zahav, they have made a god of gold. Va'ata im tisach chatatam v'im ayin, so forgive their sin, and if not, and this is the line that we all spoke about last week, mechenina misifracha asher katavta, erase me from the book that you have written. And just parenthetically, we mentioned last week in Shul, for those who were there, you heard that misifracha, from your book. So what does that mean? Wipe me out from your book. Moses said it didn't happen. We're going to see in a moment God's going to reject it. But there is one parsha in the Torah from which Moshe is absent, and that's Parshat Tetzaveh. That was last week's parsha. So two insights. One is that God said, okay, you want to be erased, but I don't want to erase you. Therefore, I'm going to wait as long as possible to fulfill this, meaning you wait an entire cycle until last week's parsha, a full cycle minus a parsha, until that moment, until Moshe's name is taken out of the Torah. Another interpretation takes this word and says, Misifracha. I saw this in the name of Rav Evadi Yosef. Misifracha, me sefer, that means book, and the last letter, chaf. You know what the numerical value of chaf is? It's 20. From the 20th book. You know what the 20th parsha of the Torah is? Parshat Tetzaveh. Me sefer chaf, from your 20th book, asher katavta. That's all drush. That's all fun. But let's get down tachlis. Okay. So if you don't forgive them, then erase me from your book. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe, mi asher chatali emchenu misifri. No, Moshe, you didn't do anything. I'm not going to erase you from the book. Whoever sinned against me will be erased from the book. Va'ata leis nechei et ha'am el asher dibarti lach. Go lead the people where I told you. Hinei malachi yelech lefanecha. My messenger will go before me. My malach, my angel will go before you. And now here's the phrase that's gonna send us in a little bit of a tailspin today. Ubeyom pokdi, on the day in which I remember, or as translated here, I make an accounting. On the day of my accounting, ufakarati alehem chatatam, I will bring them to account for their sins. What does that mean? On the day of my accounting, I'm going to bring them to account for their sins. Why not just say I'm going to punish them? What does it mean? On the day when? God, what are you holding this sin over us for? What does this mean? And Rashi, quoting the Talmud, says, Ata shamati elecha melachalotam yachad. Moshe, now I've listened to you, God says. I'm not going to consume the entire nation. I'm not going to punish everyone now. That I get. However, this sin ain't going away. And this language, beautiful language, v'tamid, tamid, ever and ever, for always and always. When I remember their sins, fakarati alehem ma'at min ha'avon hazeh im shar havonot. I'm going to remember a little bit of this sin. Whenever I remember their sins, whenever I punish them, I'm going to remember this sin just a little bit. Ve'ein puranut, and now here's the Talmud. Ve'ein puranut ba'al Yisrael she'ein bak sat mipiron avon ha'egel. There is no such thing as punishment for Israel that doesn't have a little bit, a little smidgen of the punishment for the sin of the golden calf. Is this sounding familiar to any other concepts? We know the idea that there's a sin that happened a long time ago that's being revisited again and again and again. Right? This is
when they got kicked out of the Garden of Eden.
So there's a lot of Garden of Eden here. There's a lot of original sin here. Absolutely. That's what the Talmud says. Ramban Nachmanides reinforces this in a little bit different language. He quotes a version of the Talmud that says, Ein lecha puranut. There's no such thing as having punishment. Puranut, by the way, comes from the Hebrew word lifroa, which means to pay back or to pay. So you could use this word also to pay a debt. It doesn't have to be a sin in the sin context, but puranut is punishment, is when we are paid back. She'ein ba ukiya, that there's not just a little smidgen, a little bit, me'avon ha'egel, the sin of the golden calf. That's going to be an important word that we're going to look at again and again, egel. Egel means a calf, and that sin is with us again and again and again. It never goes away. And the original in the Talmud, a little bit different language that says you have no punishment that comes to the world in which there is not that there's not 1/24 of the surplus of a litra of a first, whatever, meaning just a very small amount. The emphasis is that in every sin, there's a little bit of the golden calf. And this is where we all turn to Rav Moshe Shapiro and say, help us out. What are we talking about here? What does it mean to have a little bit of the golden calf in every sin? Like what's really, this is interesting trivia, I guess, but really what's at stake here? What are the qualities? What are the characteristics that I'm being warned about or being highlighted for me? What was the Chet HaEgel really all about? And why is that present in small measure in every sin? And that's where we're going to go for the next few minutes, down a rabbit hole of spirituality and mysticism and faith and self-critique. And that's where he's about to take us. Are you ready for the ride? This is the point where they walk around and they check that your seatbelts are working properly, that the restraining bar is going to keep you in, because here we go. So he says, it understandably follows that the sin of the golden calf itself must be part of every sin. And since there is no punishment without the sin of the golden calf, there can be no sin without it. Were it not intermingled, Israel could never sin. Meaning, I get that it's a small amount in every sin, but the fact that it's present in every single sin means that it's essential to the nature of sin. And therefore, what is it? Because if we can figure it out, then we can do away with sin. That's the exciting part about it. Let's talk about sin. There's a fascinating Gemara. Yisrael sha'amdu ala har Sinai, paska zu hamata. When the Jewish people stood at Mount Sinai, their contamination ceased. What does that mean? What do you think that means?
They had to purify themselves just to get close to the mountain.
Okay, so part of the preparation was purifying themselves, and the experience itself was like a mikvah, right? They were clean. What does that mean vis-a-vis sin? It means that anything that they had done before was wiped away. There was no contamination, no residual. That means that the sin of the first people, gone. And it makes a bit of sense, because if you're standing at Mount Sinai and you're getting a new law, then why would you be held accountable? I imagine should a country come into existence, I don't know, I'm sure there are historical precedents for this, but when a new country emerges, I don't know what happens to the holdover of prisoners and the legal system of the country that existed before. I'm sure that there are people who have studied this and have deep insights into this, but that's what's happening. Israel is standing at Mount Sinai and they're getting a new law. And therefore, everything that existed before, cleansed. Amar le, and yeah, sorry.
Is this like a rebirth
Mhm.
Complete
It's
rebirth, like a new baby.
100%. It's a rebirth, and part of the tragedy is that within a short period of time, they've sinned again, right?
Because
This is
that's human nature.
That's in part, yes. I mean, it's part of what we fight, but yeah, it's certainly it's part of the nature. But that's part of the tragedy of the sin of the golden calf. Is it's not like they had generations leading up to the sin. They had a new chance and they spoiled it. That's part of the severity of it. So Amar Le, and this is just for your interest, the continuation of the Gemara. This is not necessarily pertinent to our part. Amar Le, Rav Acha Brei de Rav Ashi, Gerim Mai. So no, what about converts? Where do they fit into this conversation? Amar Le, Afagav Dinu Lo Havu Mazlayu Havu. Even though they weren't there, they're mazal, which could be translated, they're constellations. They translate here as their guardian angels. Spiritually, they were present, even if their ancestors were not there. Dichtiv et asher yeshno po parshas nitzavim es asher yeshno po imanu hayomid hayom pnei Hashem Elokeinu et asher einenu po v'gomer. So this includes the converts. That converts were also present in some way at Mount Sinai. Okay, so all of this is just to establish that Mount Sinai was a deeply cleansing experience. And we're going to look at two verses in Psalms. Ani amarti Elohim atem. I have taken you, God says to the Jewish people, as divine beings. You're so holy. Uvnei elyon kulchem, and you are sons of the Most High. Achein ka'adam temusum achad asarim tipolu. But you shall die as men do, fall like any prince. You have two verses. Verse number 1, verse 6. What a holy verse. You are so high, you are so lofty, you are so wonderful. Then the next verse, and then you fall as men do. You fall. The Talmud says that we have to be grateful to our ancestors. If they hadn't sinned, we would never have existed. Shene'amar, ani amarti Elohim atem uvnei elyon kulchem. I said, you are sons of Most High. What does it mean that you are sons of Most High? It means you're like what? You're like angels. Angels don't procreate. So if we stayed in that lofty stage with no desires, with no inclinations towards the human needs, then we would never have existed. So the Talmud, in a very creative way, said, thank you for sinning. Thank you to our ancestors for not leaving humanity in that moment of refined spirituality, because if we did, there would be no existence of future generations, because in order to have children, you have to have passion and desires. So, okay. Fantastic. And look at what the Gaon Mevilna says. He says, when we say in the verse, your fall, meaning the sin, Achen Adam Tumusun, you shall die as men do, says the translation. The Vilna Gaon says, no. It's not like men do. Hamita Kamo al Adam. Vehema Adam. Kemoto, just like him, like the first man. We are reenacting in the Mount Sinai and sin and golden calf the cycle that existed in the Garden of Eden and the eating of the fruit. Something is happening with this sin of the golden calf, which is fundamental to the nature of sin. We are setting ourselves up again. We're in to go back to my roller coaster model. We're at that moment. I don't know if other parents will share this experience, but when I'm sitting with my kids on a roller coaster, I always do the same shtick, which is as the roller coaster goes slowly up, click, 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 I turn to them and I say, this isn't so bad, not too scary, because you know what's about to happen. And we all know what's about to happen, but that's the shtick. That's the terrible dad humor that I use every single time when I'm on a roller coaster with my kids. Not so bad when you're going uphill. Okay. And now here we are. We're at the top of the cliff, and we're ready to plunge. Thus, if we wish to gain some insight into our sins, it behooves us to contemplate as best we can the one element that encompasses all of them, the sin of the golden calf. Now, here we go. Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. We're going into numbers, we're going into numerology, we're going into gematria, we're going into the Zohar.
Well, I was going a little slow. What did we grasp from the Gaon of Vilna that was different than before?
But the idea, the interpretation, to go in the Vilna is the interpretation that it's not that we die as men do, but we die as man did, meaning it's a direct connection of the sin of the golden calf to the first man. That's it. It's not, it takes this word Adam, Achen Adam Timutun, and it's not you die as humanity dies, but you die as Adam Harishon died because of your sin. It's just framing this, extraordinary story of the sin of the golden calf within the shadow of the original sin.
Gotcha.
First sin. So here we go. So the Mishnah in Uksin, the final tractate, Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, Atid HaKadosh Baruch Hu. God, and I need to look at this in Hebrew because there are words I didn't even translate in English because we're going to talk about that. Atid HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In the future, God will lahanchil, will inherit to, or will give to l'chol tzaddik v'tzaddik, every righteous person. Shlosh me'ot v'asara olamot. 310 worlds will be given to every righteous person. Shene'amar, as the verse says, lahanchil ohavai yesh v'otzrotehem amalei, to inherit, to cause, to look at the translation, that I may cause those that love me, ohavai, those that love me, I may cause them to inherit yesh. What does yesh mean? V'otzrotehem amalei, and I will fill their treasuries. So how is that? Wait, hold on. The teaching was every righteous person is going to get 310 worlds. So how did that verse teach me 310 worlds, Michael?
Yesh is have, at least in modern Hebrew.
Yesh is have. Absolutely. Yesh is, and we're going to see yesh is a few other things, but you know what else yesh is? It means have. It means to have, to possess. Yesh. Also, it's an exclamatory phrase in modern Hebrew. Yesh, as in like yes, there is, there exists. Yesh. But you know what else it is? Numerical value. Let's go gematria. Yud is 10. Shin is
300.
300.
300.
Yesh is the gematria of 310. So that's your proof text. Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi is teaching us gematria, is teaching us numerical value. And he's saying in the future, God is going to give every tzaddik yesh, 310 worlds. Okay? That's the teaching. Simple, right? No, I have no idea what it means. So let's go deeper. And interestingly, the Tosfos Yom Tov Yom Tov Lippmann Heller, who lived in the 17th century in Prague and Poland, he's buried in the Krakow cemetery. Tosfos Yom Tov in his commentary on the Mishnah says, by the way, Yesh 310 also is connected to the number of kings that were defeated when the Israelites inherited the land of Israel. They did battle, they were victorious over 31 different kings, and 31, of course, is part of the value of Yesh of 310. Okay, so that's just one interpretation, one of the many interpretations of 310. Where did we get to talking about 310? Why does this have anything to do with the Chet HaEgel? Hold on, we're just getting there. Okay.
Question.
Yeah. Yes.
What is the meaning of a world?
Beautiful. Okay. What is the meaning of a world? I mean, the commentaries discuss this. I have no idea. This is a Kabbalistic notion that we're being presented in the Mishnah. What does it mean to inherit a world? I don't know, but maybe we're going to cast a little bit of light on it. That world is being used in a very loose way to talk about the concept of inheritance and property and things that, speaking in terms that we can understand, because we understand possessions. And so atid, in the future, God will allow us to possess all that we need. Don't know what that's referring to, but it sounds very satisfying when I think about my spiritual needs and my future needs, and that you're going to be rewarded. That's the promise, right? The general promise is if you're a tzaddik, you're going to be rewarded. What are we going to be rewarded with? So the Mishnah tells me 310 worlds. Don't know what that looks like. It's a good question, but I have no idea what that looks like, and I don't know that I'll ever know. I don't know that I'm a tzaddik. I don't know that I'll be worthy of even one of those 310 worlds, but I hope I have some taste of what that looks like at some point. Bis 120. The Zohar, to bring light on everything. The Zohar says that, I'm going to say it outside first, and then we'll look inside for a moment. The Zohar says that there's a throne of glory. God sits on the throne of glory. And the throne of glory has worlds around it. Some of the worlds are basked in light, and some dwell in darkness. The ones that are basked in light are available and are given to the righteous. Those that dwell in the darkness wait to be illuminated. So you have the light and you have the darkness. Orda, this light, it kalil b'ma'atan v'shiva almin. And I'm going to ask you to turn on the mathematical side of your brains for a moment. We're not going to do anything more complex than addition, but just we need to be attuned to these numbers. So the light occupies 207 worlds, which leaves, I said we're only going to do addition, now we have some subtraction, which leaves how many left?
103.
103. So to get to our 310. So 207 are dwelling in the light. Why 207? Why 207, by the way? Look at this word.
Or
And if you're excellent at gematria, like I try to be, you'll look at or. Aleph is 1.
1,
Vav is 6.
6,
Oh, 6, so 7.
Reish is 200. So, okay. So the light occupies 207 worlds, which is the gematria of light, or. V'itpashet b'chulu tchot korsia ila tamira, and it's okay, and it spreads out, and the light spreads out, and then under the hidden part of the kisei hakavod, not access, it doesn't access the light. Shayan ilun olamot, shayan ilun olamot misitra da'ahu yamina. That's on the right side. Sorry, tlat me'av eser inun. In their totality, they're 310. Now we have Ma'atan v'Sheva, 207, Inun b'Sitra Yamina. That's on the right side. However, Ma'at Utlat, 103 of them, Inun b'Sitra Desmala, are on the left side. The Inun Tlat Me'av Eser, which makes 310. Okay, Ve'elu Inun Kuchabrichum and Takin Tadil Tzadikah. This is what God creates for all of the righteous, and this is where all of the storehouses of goodness come from. And they're all there and being stored so that the righteous can enjoy them in the world to come. And this is what it says. Okay, so basically you have two sides of the throne of glory. The right side has 207 worlds of light, and the left side has 103 worlds of darkness. Are you with me? I don't know if I'm with me, but if you're with me, that's good.
It's interesting that they make left
And-
negative, because that's something that.
Yeah, left is absolutely going to be negative. And by the way, I just added this. I don't know where this came from, but I saw this. Yesh, no trikun. The word yesh could be an acronym for the words yamin and small, right and left. So once we're talking about the 310, maybe you have 310 split between the right and the left. What does all this have to do with the sin of the golden calf? Well, let's go back to Rav Chaim Vital, to the holy Rav Chaim Vital, who illuminated the Zohar and the Kabbalah for so many. He says, "Umikoach kaf gimel shel smol," the Kuf Gimel, which is the gematria of 103. That's how you say 103. Kuf is 100, Gimel is 3. What do you get? Yatsa Egel.
Oh,
She'oleh Kuf Gimel, which is also the value of 103. Woo! Egel, by the way, just to keep us honest with our gematria, Ayin is 70, Gimel is 3, Lamed is 30. Last I checked, that's 103. So you have the Yesh, you have the 310 split into the 207 of Or and the 103 on the left side of Egel, of the calf. What is happening? What is this teaching us? So, friends, there is a point here. I promise you. I hope it's going to be satisfying. Okay? As emerges, I wish I could have, by the way, to go back to my roller coaster. You know that photograph they take of you and you don't know that you're having a photograph taken of you at that moment? I wish I could take a photograph of all of us as we're learning these crazy gematrias with this bewildered look on our face and saying, so what? So Egel is 103, Shkoyach, and Or is 207, great, and Yesh is 310, and Yesh is also Yamin and small, right and left, and there's the Zohar, which is telling us that in the Kisei HaKavod, the throne of glory, the Yamin is Or, and the small and the left is Egel, is the golden calf. This is fantastic, but so what? As emerges from the words of our masters, the dark side of existence is where the world detaches itself from the light at its source. It considers itself extant in and of itself, independent, and not as the extension of God's will. This establishes it on the wrong side of existence. So those who have been with us for a while will remember the class on Pharaoh, how we talked about Pharaoh who made himself into a god. So this is a similar idea in that we're talking about something that is detached from the source of existence or sees itself as detached. So that which sits in the darkness doesn't realize its connection to the light. The Egel doesn't see itself as connected to the Or. It is its own entity, in which case it starts to believe in itself because it has nothing else to believe in. The illuminated part of existence is where the world illuminates the intent of creation. This realm does not consider itself autonomous. It exists. The illuminated part, that's the Or, that's the good part, because the Creator wants it to exist. Its entire essence is the fulfillment of God's will. It continues along the lines of creation. Its existence is real. You have a light at creation, and that light continues into the light, and anything that's illuminated is connected to creation. But that which is in the darkness is separate from creation, he says. And let me go. I want to plug on a little bit because I think it's going to become a little bit clearer. I hope. I pray it's going to become a little bit clearer because as he illustrates this concept so beautifully, in contrast to continuation, which is always illustrated as a line that extends onwards, something linear. The Hebrew word whose numerical value equals the number of worlds on the dark side is Egel, right? That's the 103, related to Ma'agal. The calf is related to a circle. And the nature of a circle is that it connects to nothing else other than itself. It's an enclosed area, separated and detached from what is outside it. So we can start to see a little bit of a path here. I feel like we should take a 7-minute meditation break right now just to try to understand what we talked about. But in the absence of this, if you're watching this later on YouTube, press pause now, come back 7 minutes later, and maybe it'll make sense to you. But the idea being that what the Egel representing is a separate and is an existence that sees itself as separate from everything else. That's part of it. We're going to connect this back to the idea of sin, of what's in every sin, and we could see a little bit of a path right now. But understanding the Egel, the calf, as related to that which is not illuminated from the light of creation and the light of the Torah, that is on the dark side, if you will, and it creates its own ma'agal, which it sees itself as its own beginning and its own end and its own telos and its own purpose and its own existence. and not
It's like Honey
connected
Ma'agel.
to any other.
It's like Honey Ma'agel that made a circle
So,
away
Oni
from
Hamagal.
so excellent. So Choni Amagal is the one who creates a circle, and they're for a positive purpose. That's a positive example because Choni in the Talmud is praying, the Talmud in Tain is praying for rain and draws a circle and says, "I'm not going to leave here until." That's where the legend of Sleepy Hollow, Washington Irving, was born of that Talmudic story of the person who slept for 70 years and woke up. That's Choni Amagal. So there are positive examples of this. But the essence of a circle is that it is disconnected from from any existence outside of it. Michael.
I just thought when you mentioned Honi wasn't necessary, knowing his attributes in the Talmud, if he's necessarily the best example to use as a Talmudic sage.
Yeah, excellent point. Excellent point. Okay, so let's take a few steps. We don't have much more to do, but we're going to take a few steps further. Okay, our rabbis have taught us. This is Nachmanides. Our rabbis have taught us an interpretation, and they have revealed the secret of it. So God said to Moses, now this is going into some deeply spiritual concepts. Moshe, you see them in one appearance. You see them in one appearance. I see them in two appearances. You see them coming to Sinai and accepting my Torah, and I see them contemplating me and how I came forth in my traveling coach. Right? You see the people and how I came forth in my traveling coach. As it said, the chariots of God are myriads, even thousands upon thousands, and they will unhitch one of my tetramulin. Look at that Hebrew word, tetramulin, which means four. Tetra is four, and mulin is mules, like mules. So like there was a chariot with, as described in the prophet, there's a chariot with these four living creatures. And the tetramulin is used as a symbol of the four chayot. And the student learned, Hamaskil Yavin, the student learned in Kabbalah will understand. So what happens in the moment of sin? The moment of sin was that the chariots of God were unhitched. One of the tetramulin, and which was it? As the verse in Yechezkel says, Upnei shor mehasmol. It was the face of an ox. Get it? The ox, the egel, the calf, the ox, the same idea, was on the left side. That's the side of the darkness. That's the side that was detached. What does this mean? One of the four was separated and perceived independently of the others. As all know, the left corresponds to the attribute of justice. It does not originate action, but preserves what already exists. It restricts and withholds expansion, in contrast to bestowal and kindness, which is related to the right. And I'm going to skip over this for a moment because the next source will take us well beyond our allocated time. It will take a long time to process, but the next source is a part of the censored Talmud. And it's a source that speaks to Jewish-Christian relations. It's a source that takes responsibility a little bit for the actions of a certain individual. It takes Jewish responsibility for those actions. But the point of the source is going to be signaled in the last phrase, Shetehei smol docha v'yamin mikarevet. That the left hand should always be the hand that pushes away, and the right hand should always be the hand that draws closer. I don't want to dwell on this source right now, but I'm putting it out there as an example of what the Talmud says. Read it on your own time, of what the Talmud says, which is when it comes to the balance between the right and the left, the right is kindness. Be stronger with that. The left is justice. The left is what, and I think about this in terms of what, in terms of shooting a basketball. I think about this because in a typical set shot of a basketball, the left hand is the hand that stabilizes the ball. The right hand, you taking a righty, this is a righty normative expression, but the right hand is the hand that gives the power, and the left hand is the one that stabilizes. And this is the idea that's being presented here. that the left hand is the hand of justice. It keeps it in line. The right hand is the hand that bestows the kindness. That's where the real power should be coming from the kindness, not from the justice. When the living being with the face of the ox was slipped away from the other transporters of heavenly governance and perceived independently, the bestowal at the root of being was negated, naturally the purpose of being as well. Existence was perceived as is its own circle. So when you take that egel, that shore, that ox, that calf, and you separate it from the rest of the chariot, what do you have? You have a calf, you have an ox, you have existence that doesn't see the rest of the chariot. It doesn't see what it's supposed to be doing, which is being one wheel on a four-wheeled chariot. It simply rolls on and on and on, conscious only of its own existence. That's the idea of the egel, of the chet egel. One more point in this regard has to do with the idea of mincha. Mincha. What does mincha have to do with, okay, finally, you've sold me on light and darkness and the throne of glory and all kinds of things. But what do we have to do? So we know that Yitzchak decreed tfilat mincha, right? The Talmud says that Abraham was the source of Shachrit, Yaakov was the source of Mariv, and Yitzchak was the source of Mincha. By the way, if you should ever forget who is who, I'm going to give you the best mnemonic possible to remember it. The second letter of each of their names. Avraham, the second letter of his name is Bet. When is his prayer said?
Boker.
Boker. Yitzchak, the second letter of his name is Sadi.
Mincha.
In the afternoon. And Yaakov, the second letter of his name is Ayin, which is Erev. So that's how you remember. Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov are Boker, Tzarayim, and Erev, morning, afternoon, and evening. So Yitzchak is the afternoon prayer, is the mincha. So what? So before man initially sets out, he prays the morning prayer to convey that God enables him to work and to labor. And when he returns, so morning prayer, we're all on board with. God, please help me succeed. When he returns in the evening, he prays another unique prayer, which is after he worked and after he earned what he considers his, he returns it to his source. So that there's kind of more of an understood notion of before I work, after I work, what the prayers are. He acknowledges the bestowal to ensure that no egel proceeds from it. So the mincha, the afternoon prayer, is going to be essential because it's going to fight the egel, the idea that I live in my own circle. Everything comes from God. Why is this? Egel is the perception of existing in a closed circle, detached from what is outside from it. And to thwart this notion, to know that what we have is not ours, we pray the afternoon prayer, mincha, which incidentally, mincha is gematria egel, the same gematria as the word for the calf. And just to keep us honest again, mincha, mem is 40, nun is 50, chet is 8, and hey is 5, totaling 103. Esther.
Yeah, it's totally different. But what is the Hebrew word for the bridge?
A bridge.
Gesher.
Connection.
Gesher.
It's a gesher or a kesher would be more of a connection.
And the gematria
Related
for
words.
that?
What's that?
The gematria for that
The gematria for that is 600. Kesher.
doesn't work in my mind.
Yeah, gematrias take a long time. Okay.
No, the reason I asked for that is because I see mincha as the bridge between the getting ready in the morning and the evening.
There is a gematria that will express that. I just don't know what it is right now. But if we work long and hard enough, we will come up with the right gematria. So mincha is the same as egel, because mincha reminds us not to draw our ma'agal, not to live within our circle, that what I'm working for now is connected to the source of my existence, is connected to my creator. Don't think about the ma'agal, about that. By the way, talking about Isaac, what was the big struggle with Isaac? His children. The struggle between his children, Jacob and Esau. Vayevater Yaakov levado, Jacob remained alone. Vayeavek ish imo adalot hashachar, and a person struggled with him, wrestled with him until the break of dawn. And this word, vayeavek, to struggle, what is it? Where is it from? So the Gemara in Chulin says, this teaches us, shehe'elu avak, comes from the Hebrew word avak, which means dust, that they fought so much that the dust that their feet kicked up went all the way up to, we're back at the throne of glory. That dust ascended all the way up to the throne of glory. You see where I'm going with this? The struggle of Esav is dust. What do we have to say about dust? Here you go. The Shnei Luchot Habrit teaches us, the Shla teaches us, avak, the Hebrew word, Aleph is 1, Bet is 2, Kuf is 100. Gematria Egel. It's the same numerical value as the word for the golden calf. So it's Mincha, it's 103, which is the same as Mincha, which is the same as Egel, which is the same as Avak, which is the dust of their struggle, that this is the struggle. The struggle is with this tendency to close ourselves off in a circle and to forget that we are part of a continuation of creation, of that exists. All that exists in the light is part of that continuation. The problem is that there's also the darkness, and that's where the Chet HaEgel lives. That's where the sin of the golden calf lives. And Rav Moshe Shapiro, as he will conclude for us, he says, ever since the giving of the Torah until the ultimate rectification at the end of all generations, the root of every sin of every member of Israel is the face of the ox to the left that was slipped out, producing the golden calf. And the sages are teaching us that if we want to grab the bull by its horns, even Rav Moshe Shapiro is not above a good pun, if we want to grab a bull by its horns, we must rectify the misapprehension that was introduced by the sin of the golden calf, the attitude that underlies every sin. In the coarsest of terms, one who embraces this attitude declares, once I exist, I am the one who determines my existence. I will do what I decide. That's the circle. I live within the circle of my existence. It begins and ends with me, the Ma'agal, the Egel, one who is even more brazen-faced, embraces even towards others. He expands his Ma'agal, his golden calf, over a great area to say, my circle is not only me, my circle is you too. I am part of what created, I'm the reason for the existence. I am the purpose of all that's here. That's the idea. That's where sin comes from, is that everything is here to serve my needs, that the world is here, that you are here, that other people are here, that other people's property is here. It's all there to serve my needs and my desires. That's the circle that we build, the circle of sin, the circle of the Egel. To live and
Close the
to
door, it's noisy.
and to oppose this, is to live in the light and to embrace the light of the or of the other 207, which will get us to our 310, which is all that the righteous will inherit. Is that
Rabbi?
clear?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hi, Rabbi. I don't know. I'm thinking about something, but you were talking about, that the sin of the golden calf is always with us. And then I'm thinking of what we just had with Purim, with Amalek, that you're not supposed to forget. You're supposed to remember to forget, whatever. So I'm just trying to think. It's funny that both things are both of not forgetting, that we're never going to be forgiven because we're always going to be, that the sin of the golden calf is always with us, and we have to remember that it's always with us. And then the part about Amalek, is there anything like that there, or am I just fishing?
No, you're certainly not fishing. I think we spoke last time we met. Last time we met was also, we spoke about the idea of remembering the giving of Sinai and what that means to keep Sinai with us forever. So there are all these concepts that are part of our souls, that are just an indelible part of who we are, whether for good or for bad, and what that means. Last time we spoke about the giving of the Torah, right? And how that event of the giving of the Torah, we're supposed to remember, even though we didn't experience it ourselves. So we have memories that we have to remember. We have memories that we're not allowed to forget. And we have this idea of sin that's part of everything. But what I think he succeeded in doing, at least for me, was he took a very basic idea that's it's a very kind of surface level fundamental idea, which is the sin of the golden calf is very important. It's so important that it's part of every sin that's performed for all times. And he gave us what I would call in Hebrew a mahalach, a path to understand what. So what does that mean exactly? So he explains it to us using beautiful linguistic ideas, using access to Kabbalistic literature that most don't have, to say, actually, the Egel represents the Ma'agal, which represents an attitude, which is found in the darkness under the Kisei HaKavod, which is found by cutting oneself off from the light, which is found by thinking that the Ma'agal is the purpose, is the beginning and the end of all existence. And all of that comes back to the golden calf. And that's what's part of every sin, is that attitude. And if you can just do away with that attitude, if you could just understand that you're part of something bigger, that's all you need to remember, is that you are here because God created you. I am here because God created me. I have what I have in life because this is what God wanted me to have. And if I can just keep that in mind, then there's no sin. If there's no attitude of the egel, of the golden calf, then there is no more sin. As long as there's golden calf, there's sin. As long as there's sin, there's golden calf. So I find it a very helpful way of thinking about it. It starts in a very kind of basic way. He goes into a very deep and wonderful place. And by the time we reemerge, we have this openness to a whole new way of thinking about the sin of the golden calf and about sin in general and about our attitude to God and our own lives and our own relationships with God. And to me, that's quite extraordinary to have that journey. I don't know if you could see my hair is all back from the wind of the flips and the turns and everything, but yeah, my hair is cropped out of the shot, so you can't see it. But if I had hair, that's what it would look like.
Thanks, Rabbi.
So, in any event, any questions or comments? Because we've reached the end of our ride. The seat restraints have come up on their own, and we can get up and now check out the pictures.
I
and
don't
look at
mind
what-
your roller coaster, but I don't like the real roller coasters. I can't take them.
And enjoy it now while you can go on with your kids, Rabbi, because when you get older, you don't want to go anywhere near a roller coaster. You get very nauseous.
Absolutely. I very much relate to that. There was an episode I saw a number of years ago of the television show Modern Family.
Oh, yeah.
If anybody
Yes.
watched that, where the protagonist is a father around my age, and he goes to the amusement park with his children, and he gets nauseous on the rides, and he's deeply distressed at what that means in terms of his own aging. And there you go, David, for illustrative purposes. And as part of the episode, he then realizes, he wakes up the next morning with a fever and realizes he has the flu, and he is so happy that his nausea was attributable to the flu and not to aging. So I feel that way also, that I don't enjoy roller coasters like I used to, but I can still go on with my kids and
Funny.
pretend to have a good time at least. So it's
I can honestly say I never liked the roller coaster, even when I was a kid. I like my 2 feet on the ground.
perfect. All right. Well, thank you everybody for your presence and participation. It was really wonderful to be back together, and please God, next week, same time, same channel.
תודה לך.
Fascinating
Oh,
stuff.
thank
יום
you.
טוב לך.
Rabbi, how did you come upon
Shabbat shalom.
the particular rabbi that we're using, Rabbi Shapiro? How did you first come upon him?
Okay, well, I came upon him when I was a student in yeshiva. I attended one lecture that he delivered in Jerusalem. It was considered a great privilege, and I remember being selected by one of the rabbis in my yeshiva to go with him and a few others into Jerusalem to attend this weekly lecture, which seats were at a premium. Somebody had to not be able to make it in order for a seat to be open for you. And I attended one lecture, and the lecture changed the way I looked at a number of different topics. And I didn't realize until years later what a great privilege it was to be at that lecture and how sought after his teachings were. And when he passed away a few years ago, there was a renewed interest in his Torah because it's so original and so creative and so unique and so broad and so interesting, I think. So it really, I had always had this connection to this Rav from that one experience. And then when I saw that a few volumes of his writings were being published, I jumped on it really for personal interest. And then once I read a few of the essays, I said, oh, this is just too good not to share. So
And where did he get, and where did the Rav get his background, Rabbi Shapiro? Where did he get his background? In the United States?
I hope at some point to do a session, and maybe we'll wait for Shavuot around there to do it, on his background and on his inspirations. He always attributed his teachings to a number of different teachers, well-known teachers that he studied from, but everybody sees the uniqueness of his voice, that he's really unlike anyone else. So I think he took it from a number of different places, and he has also some secular influences in there and in his writings. There clearly is philosophy and psychology and a lot more that's informing his thought process. So we'll take a look at that another time. I'm not equipped to do that right now, but
He learned with Rav Chaim Kanievsky, didn't he?
what's that?
You learned with Rav Chaim Kanievsky?
I don't know. Could be. I don't know offhand.
Well, I'm glad that you were chosen by Yeshiva to go, because otherwise we would not be having these lovely sessions.
Oh, I appreciate that. I was chosen by virtue of my Hebrew, my language skills. It was my second year, and I was in the American program at this yeshiva. I was one of the few who could kind of go. At that point, I had paid a lot of attention to Hebrew, and I was one of the few who could go to a Hebrew language shiur and without difficulty. So
Good.
it was not my processing abilities or any advanced intellectual skills. It was really linguistic that I was chosen, but I'm grateful that I was.
Rabbi, if I could just interject quickly, it's obvious that at the end of each session, people have a lot to say. And I'm wondering if it wouldn't be a good idea to not necessarily run out of the classroom.
I think it's a great idea. I'm going to ask Maddie now to stop the recording.